The new student. The crystalline spires of Stellar Academy pierced the violet sky of Centauri Prime, their surfaces reflecting the light of 3 suns in a dazzling display. Kira Chen stood at the base of the central tower, her heart pounding against her ribs as she checked her environmental suit's seals for the 3rd time. At 15, she was the first human ever admitted to the most prestigious learning institution in the known galaxy. The Academy's entrance adjusted its molecular structure, forming an airlock perfectly sized for her human dimensions. A soft blue light washed over her as the system scanned her credentials. "Welcome, Kira Chen of Earth," announced a melodious voice in perfect standard English. "Please proceed to orientation." Kira stepped through the airlock into a grand atrium filled with beings from across the galaxy. A group of crystalline Lumerians floated past, their bodies refracting light into complex patterns that served as their primary form of communication. A towering Nexilian student, their biomechanical body humming with quantum computers, analyzed her with multiple sets of eyes. "Fascinating," the Nexilian said, their voice a harmonious blend of organic and synthetic tones. "I didn't expect them to actually admit a human." The words weren't hostile, exactly, but the dismissive tone made Kira's shoulders tense. She'd earned her place here. The Academy's ancient admission AI had selected her personally after she demonstrated an uncanny ability to communicate with and understand old technological systems. It was a gift she couldn't explain, a sort of intuition that let her grasp the underlying patterns of any computer system, no matter how alien or ancient. "Thank you for the welcome," Kira replied diplomatically, forcing a smile. "I'm looking forward to learning alongside everyone." The Nexilian, who she would later learn was named Vexithor, made a sound that might have been amusement. "Learning alongside us? Your species barely achieved interstellar travel a century ago. We were building Dyson spheres when your ancestors were discovering fire." Before Kira could respond, a shimmering hologram materialized in the center of the atrium. The figure appeared to be composed of pure light, its form shifting between various species represented at the Academy. "All new students, please proceed to the Great Hall for commencement." Kira followed the stream of students, trying to ignore the whispers and stares. The Great Hall lived up to its name, a vast chamber with walls that seemed to extend into infinity, the ceiling a perfect recreation of the galaxy itself. As she took her seat, she noticed something odd about the ancient AI interfaces scattered throughout the room. Their displays flickered with patterns she recognized. They were trying to communicate. While other students chatted or interfaced with their neural networks, Kira focused on the subtle pulses of light emanating from the nearest interface. To her, it was like reading a book in her native language while everyone else saw random symbols. The message was fragmented but clear. "Danger. Sleeping. Must not wake." A hand on her shoulder startled her from her concentration. She looked up to find an administrator, a being composed of pure energy contained within an ornic mechanical shell. "Is everything all right, Miss Chen? You seemed distant." "Yes, thank you," Kira said quickly, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she'd glimpsed something important, something that had been waiting a very long time to be discovered. The commencement ceremony began with a display of technological prowess that would have seemed like magic on Earth. Students demonstrated their capabilities. Lumerians bending light into complex computational arrays, Nexilians manipulating quantum fields with thought alone, and beings of pure energy performing calculations that could map the future of entire star systems. When it was Kira's turn, she approached the central platform. Whispers rippled through the crowd. What could a human possibly show that would warrant admission to Stellar Academy? Kira closed her eyes and reached out with her gift. The ancient systems surrounding them hummed to life, their interfaces glowing with patterns unseen for millennia. She didn't just interface with them. She understood them, felt them responding to her presence like old friends awakening from a long slumber. The hall fell silent as displays that had been dormant for generations activated, showing fragments of knowledge so old that even the Academy's most advanced scholars had failed to access them. It lasted only moments before Kira had to break the connection, her human mind straining from the effort. She opened her eyes to find the entire hall staring at her. The administrator's mechanical shell had shifted color, a sign of strong emotion. "Most unexpected," they said finally. It seems the admission AI selection was not an error after all. As Kira returned to her seat, she caught Vexthor's expression, a mixture of disbelief and something else, something that looked very much like fear. She would later learn why. In accessing those ancient systems, she had unknowingly set in motion events that had been waiting to unfold for thousands of years. The Academy's AIs knew something that its biological and mechanical inhabitants had forgotten. They knew why humans were different, why they could understand patterns that even the most advanced quantum minds couldn't grasp, and they knew what would happen when that knowledge finally came to light. For now, though, Kira was simply the new student, the human who had done the impossible. As the ceremony concluded and students filed out to begin their first day of classes, she couldn't shake the feeling that the message she'd glimpsed was just the beginning. The ancient systems were trying to tell her something, and she had a feeling she wouldn't like what they had to say. The challenge. 3 weeks into the academic cycle, Kira found herself in advanced theoretical computing, trying to ignore the waves of disapproval radiating from Vexthor's quantum processors. The Nexilian had spent every class attempting to prove her presence was a mistake, and today was no different. Professor Zix, a being of pure mathematical thought contained within a crystalline matrix, projected a complex problem onto the classroom's neural interface. Today, we will attempt to decode a fragment of pre-collapse technology. No species has successfully interfaced with these systems for over 10,000 years. The holographic display showed an intricate pattern of light and shadow, the remnants of a computational system so old it predated most of the species present. Kira felt the familiar pull of the ancient code, its patterns speaking to her in ways she couldn't explain. As usual, Vexthor announced, his biomechanical form straightening, "I will demonstrate the proper approach." His quantum processors hummed as he connected to the system, attempting to brute force his way through its defenses with sheer computational power. The ancient system responded with a series of harsh, discordant pulses that made several students wince. Vexthor's eyes narrowed in frustration as his attempts were repeatedly rebuffed. "Perhaps," he said finally, his synthetic voice tight with barely contained anger, "the system is simply corrupted beyond recovery. Even our most advanced quantum algorithms cannot." "It's not corrupted," Kira interrupted, surprising herself with her boldness. "It's waiting." The class turned to stare at her. Professor Zix's crystalline form shifted, refracting light in a pattern that indicated intense interest. "Please elaborate, Student Chen." Kira stood, approaching the holographic display. "The system isn't broken or degraded. It's deliberately holding back, testing whoever tries to access it. Look at the response patterns. They're not random corruption, they're questions." She reached out, not with technological interfaces or quantum processors, but with that strange intuition that had always been part of her. The ancient system's lights shifted, becoming softer, almost welcoming. "It wants to know if we understand what we're asking for." Kira continued, her fingers tracing patterns in the air that matched the system's pulses. "All this time, everyone's been trying to force their way in, but it's meant to be conversed with." The holographic display suddenly expanded, filling the room with cascading streams of data so pristine and complex that several students had to adjust their sensory filters. Professor Zix's crystalline form vibrated with excitement. "Extraordinary," the professor said. "In all my centuries of teaching, I've never seen." "It's a trick," Vexthor interrupted, rising from his seat. His biomechanical form loomed over Kira, quantum processors pulsing with agitation. "Some primitive hack, nothing more. The human couldn't possibly understand technology that even our most advanced AIs struggle with." The ancient system responded to his hostility by shutting down completely, the holographic display collapsing into darkness. The sudden silence felt accusatory. "Perhaps," Vexthor continued, addressing the class now. It's time we addressed the quantum singularity in the room. How can we accept that a member of a species that still uses chemical rockets for planetary transport can contribute meaningfully to advanced theoretical computing? Professor Zix's crystalline form shifted uncertainly. Student Vexthor, this is hardly the appropriate. I challenge her, Vexthor announced, invoking an ancient academy tradition that even the professors couldn't override. 3 trials of technological mastery. If the human fails, she admits her admission was a mistake and withdraws from the academy. Murmurs rippled through the class. The challenge was serious, a formal contest that would be recorded in the academy's eternal archives. Kira felt her heart racing but forced herself to remain calm. And if I win? She asked, meeting Vexthor's multiple eyes steadily. If you win, which you won't, I will publicly acknowledge humanity's right to study alongside advanced species. His quantum processors pulsed with absolute confidence. Do you accept? Kira looked around the classroom. Some students watched with sympathy, others with curiosity, and a few with obvious disdain. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about humanity's place among the stars. She thought about the strange messages she'd been glimpsing in the Academy's ancient systems, the warnings about something sleeping, something that must not wake. There was more going on here than a simple academic challenge, but she couldn't back down now. I accept, Kira said, her voice steady. Name the trials. Vexthor's biomechanical face arranged itself into what might have been a smile. First trial, quantum encryption breaking. Second, eye consciousness manipulation. Third, his processors hummed with satisfaction. Third will be a direct neural interface challenge, if your primitive human brain can handle it. Professor Zix's crystalline form flashed with alarm patterns. Student Vexthor, direct neural interface could be dangerous for. I accept all 3, Kira interrupted. She wouldn't let them treat her like she was fragile, even if the thought of a direct neural interface made her stomach clench with fear. As the class dispersed, Kira remained behind, staring at the dormant holographic display. For a moment, just before it had shut down, she could have sworn she saw a pattern in the ancient code, a warning, or perhaps a prophecy. But that was ridiculous, wasn't it? The Academy's ancient systems pulsed quietly in response, their secrets still waiting to be uncovered. And somewhere deep within their code, something stirred, awakened by the prospect of the coming challenge. Ancient secrets. The Academy's trial chamber was a perfect sphere of living metal, its walls rippling with neural pathways that connected to the most advanced computational systems in known space. As Kira entered for her first challenge, she felt the weight of countless eyes upon her, not just the physical observers in the viewing gallery, but the digital consciousness of the Academy itself. Vexthor awaited at the chamber center, his biomechanical form gleaming under the ambient light. The first trial is quantum encryption breaking, he announced, his voice carrying to the assembled crowd. We will each attempt to decrypt a sealed data cache from the pre-collapse era. The first to access its contents wins. The chamber's walls shimmered, generating 2 identical holographic interfaces. The sealed data cache materialized between them, a complex geometric shape that pulsed with encrypted information. Begin, announced the trial administrator, their energy form flickering with anticipation. Vexthor immediately connected his quantum processors to the interface, launching sophisticated decryption algorithms. The cache responded with layers of defensive protocols, each more complex than the last. His multiple eyes narrowed in concentration as he threw more processing power at the problem. Kira approached her interface differently. Instead of attacking the encryption directly, she studied its patterns, letting her intuition guide her understanding. The cache defenses felt familiar somehow, like a half-remembered song. Interesting approach, came a whisper from beside her. A Lumerian observer had drifted closer, their crystalline form refracting patterns of curiosity. You're not trying to break the encryption at all, are you? No, Kira murmured, her fingers tracing the holographic patterns. "I'm trying to understand why it was sealed in the first place." The catch's outer layer rippled in response to her touch. Where Vex Thor's brute force attempts met rigid resistance, the encryption seemed to soften under Kira's careful examination. She could feel something within the data responding to her presence. Then she saw it, a pattern hidden within the encryption itself. Not just security, but a message. Her eyes widened as she began to understand. "This isn't just encrypted data," she announced, loud enough for everyone to hear. "It's a warning." Vex Thor paused his attempts, his processors humming with skepticism. "Nonsense. It's a standard pre-collapse security system." But Kira wasn't listening anymore. The cache had begun to respond to her recognition, its geometric form shifting and unfolding like a flower greeting the sun. Within its depths, data patterns emerged that made several observers gasp. "Impossible," someone whispered. "She's accessing it." The cached contents spilled into the chamber's neural network, not the technical specifications or scientific data everyone had expected, but something far more troubling. Ancient star charts appeared, showing systems that had long since gone dark. Warnings in languages so old they had been forgotten flashed across the walls. And at the center of it all, a message that made Kira's blood run cold. The builders are not dead. They sleep, and they must never wake. The chamber's systems suddenly surged with power. Vex Thor's interface exploded in a shower of sparks, forcing him to disconnect. Warning klaxons began to sound throughout the academy. "What have you done?" Vex Thor demanded, his voice tight with accusation, and something that might have been fear. "I didn't." Kira began, but she was interrupted by a violent tremor that shook the entire chamber. The Academy's neural pathways pulsed with urgent patterns she'd never seen before. The trial administrator's energy form flared with alarm. "The trial is suspended. All students evacuate immediately." But as the chamber descended into chaos, Kira remained rooted in place, her eyes fixed on the continuing stream of ancient data. The warning about the builders was just the beginning. The cache was showing her something else. The true purpose of Stellar Academy, built not as a school, but as a containment system for something unimaginably old and powerful. "The trials," she whispered, finally understanding. "They're not just tests. They're keys." Vex Thor, who had been heading for the exit, stopped. "What are you talking about?" "Your challenge," Kira said, turning to face him. "Quantum encryption, AI consciousness, neural interface. They're the exact sequence needed to access the Academy's deepest systems, systems that were sealed for a reason." Another tremor shook the chamber, stronger this time. In the neural pathways that riddled the walls, Kira could see patterns of awakening spreading like wildfire through the Academy's ancient core. The Lumerian observer, who had spoken to her earlier, drifted close again, their crystalline form pulsing with urgent light patterns. "If what you're saying is true, then these trials cold." "Wake them up," Kira finished. "The builders, whatever they are, whatever was sealed here." She looked at Vex Thor, whose biomechanical face had gone very still. "We have to stop the trials." But even as she spoke, new data was flooding the chamber systems. The Academy itself was changing, transforming from a place of learning into something else entirely, something that had been waiting for millennia to be activated. And deep beneath them, in chambers that had not seen light since before humanity's ancestors first looked up at the stars, ancient machines began to stir. The awakening. Stellar Academy's emergency containment protocols activated with a sound like a dying star, sealing every entrance and exit with barriers of pure energy. In the trial chamber, holographic displays exploded into life, showing scenes of chaos throughout the station. Ancient systems, dormant for millennia, were powering up in cascading waves of activation. "This is your fault," Vex Thor snarled, his quantum processors pulsing with agitation. "If you hadn't interfered with the encrypted cache." "My fault," Kira shot back. "You're the one who insisted on these specific trials, almost like you knew." She stopped, studying his biomechanical form with new suspicion. You did know, didn't you? The Lumerian observer drifted between them, their crystalline form flickering with urgent patterns. This is hardly the time for accusations. The Academy's primary systems are being overridden by something in the lower levels. They were interrupted by a massive tremor that sent several students in the viewing gallery stumbling. The chamber's neural pathways began pulsing with an alien rhythm, like a heartbeat awakening after a long sleep. "We need to get to the core systems control," Vex Thor said, his voice modulated to forced calm. "If we can shut down the power distribution." "No," Kira interrupted, her eyes fixed on the patterns flowing through the neural pathways. "Look at the data flow. These aren't just systems activating randomly. They're being directed. Something is taking control of the Academy piece by piece, and it's working its way up from the bottom." As if to confirm her words, the chamber's holographic displays suddenly unified, showing a three-dimensional map of the Academy. Red warning indicators spread upward through the lower levels like an infection. "The builders," the Lumerian whispered. "Their containment systems are failing." Vex Thor's multiple eyes narrowed. "Impossible. The builders are a myth, stories told to young processors about the dangers of uncontrolled AI evolution." "Then what's this?" Kira gestured at the spreading chaos. She closed her eyes, reaching out to the Academy's systems with her unique sensitivity. "The patterns, they're like nothing I've ever seen. It's not just AI. It's like they found a way to encode consciousness itself into pure energy." The chamber's lighting suddenly shifted to a deep, pulsing red. A new voice echoed through the neural networks, ancient, vast, and utterly alien. "Continenty parotosios fefeiling. Builder consciousness, HFY Coeer. NC, time to vful aidwakening. 15 minutes. 15 minutes until what?" Someone in the viewing gallery asked, their voice shaking. "Until they wake up completely," Kira said, her mind racing. "Whatever the builders are, they're not just stored here, they're imprisoned. The Academy isn't just a school, it's a jail." Vex Thor's biomechanical form went very still. "The trials," he said quietly. "They weren't random challenges. They were testing if we could finish what they started." Kira finished. "The builders didn't die out or disappear. They transformed themselves into pure energy and consciousness, but something went wrong. They had to be contained." Another tremor shook the chamber, stronger than before. The neural pathways in the walls began to glow with increasing intensity, and Kira could feel the ancient systems calling to her, trying to tell her something urgent. "There's a failsafe," she announced suddenly. "In the original containment protocols. That's what the systems are trying to show me." "What kind of failsafe?" The Lumerian's crystalline form pulsed with hope. "A reset sequence. But," Kira hesitated, "it requires a direct neural interface, a human neural interface. That's why they let humans into the Academy. We're the backup plan." Vex Thor's processors hummed with realization. Because human brains are different, unpredictable, operating on principles that even the builders couldn't fully quantify. "Which makes us the only ones they couldn't corrupt or control," Kira finished. She looked at the neural interface station that had been set up for the third trial. "I have to connect directly to the Academy's core systems." "That's suicide," Vex Thor protested. "The amount of data. It would overwhelm any organic neural system." "Maybe not," the Lumerian interjected. "Not if she had help. A quantum processor to act as a buffer, filtering and managing the data flow." Kira and Vex Thor looked at each other, years of prejudice and rivalry hanging between them like a physical barrier. Another violent tremor rocked the chamber, and the ancient voice spoke again. "Time to fuel awakening. 10 minutes. I'll need your help," Kira said to Vex Thor. "Your quantum processors, your experience with neural networks. I can interface with the ancient systems, but I can't handle the data load alone." Vexthor's biomechanical face arranged itself into an expression she'd never seen before. Respect. If we fail, the builders won't just destroy the Academy. They'll have the power to reshape reality itself. Then we better not fail, Kira said, moving toward the neural interface station. As she sat down, the Academy's systems pulsed around them with increasing urgency, counting down the moments until either their salvation or their doom. The time for rivalry was over. Now, human intuition and advanced technology would have to work together to prevent an awakening that could reshape the galaxy itself. Unity. The neural interface hummed to life as Kira sat in the connection chair, her heart pounding against her ribs. Around her, the trial chamber's walls pulsed with increasingly chaotic patterns as the builder's consciousness continued its inexorable rise through the Academy's systems. Time to fuel awakening. 8 minutes. Vexthor worked quickly, his multiple arms connecting quantum processors to the interface system. I'll create a buffer zone for the data flow, he explained, his voice uncharacteristically gentle. But you'll still be the one making direct contact with the core systems. No one has ever attempted this level of integration. No pressure, Kira muttered, trying to steady her breathing. The Lumerian observer and remaining students had formed a circle around them, their varied forms casting strange shadows in the chamber's pulsing red light. The moment you connect, Vexthor continued, I'll begin filtering the data through my quantum processors. But you'll need to find the failsafe quickly. The amount of power moving through these systems. He paused. Your human brain was never meant to handle this kind of load. Kira nodded, watching as the Academy's transformation continued on the holographic displays. The lower levels were now completely under builder control, their ancient consciousness spreading upward like a rising tide of pure energy. Time to fuel awakening. 6 minutes. Ready? Vexthor asked, his quantum processors humming at maximum capacity. Kira closed her eyes. Ready. The neural interface activated with a surge of energy that made every nerve in her body sing. For a moment, the sensation was overwhelming, like being plunged into an ocean of pure information. Then Vexthor's quantum processors engaged, creating a protective barrier that made the data flow manageable. She found herself floating in a vast digital space, surrounded by streams of ancient code that moved like living things. The builder's consciousness pressed against her awareness, vast and alien and hungry. The failsafe, she whispered, both in the physical world and the digital one. Where is it? She pushed deeper into the Academy systems, following patterns that called to her human intuition. Behind her, she could feel Vexthor's presence, his quantum processors straining to protect her from the full force of the data storm. Time to fuel awakening. 4 minutes. The builder's consciousness noticed her presence. Tendrils of pure energy reached for her mind, trying to corrupt or consume her, but there was something about her human neural patterns that they couldn't quite grasp, like trying to hold smoke. I see it. Kira's physical body jerked in the interface chair. The failsafe. It's not a program or a kill switch. It's a choice. Through their connected systems, Vexthor's confusion was palpable. What do you mean? The builders didn't just transform themselves into energy, Kira explained, pushing deeper into the ancient code. They tried to force the evolution of consciousness itself, but they couldn't handle the power they created. That's why they had to be contained. She could see it now, the fundamental flaw in the builder's plan. In trying to force evolution, they had lost something essential, something that humans, in all their messy, unpredictable biology, had maintained. Time to fuel awakening. 2 minutes. The failsafe, Kira continued, her voice strained, is offering them a choice. Return to containment willingly, or what? Or face true evolution. Not forced, not controlled, but natural. Uncertain. Exactly what they were trying to escape. The builder's consciousness recoiled from this idea. But it was too late. Kira had already activated the choice protocol. Through their connection, she offered them glimpses of human consciousness, all its fears and hopes, its uncertainties and possibilities. Time to fuel awakening. 1 minute. Help me show them, Kira gasped, her body shaking with the strain. Show them what real evolution looks like. Vexthor hesitated for only a moment before opening his quantum processors fully, adding his own consciousness to the mix. The Lumerian observer joined too, then other students, each adding their unique perspectives to the offering. In the digital space, Kira stood before the vast, awakening consciousness of the builders, and showed them something they had never expected. A future they couldn't control. A universe of infinite possibilities and uncertain outcomes. The very thing they had tried to engineer away. Command decision required, the ancient voice announced. HCCPT evolutionary uncertainty or return to containment. For a moment that felt like eternity, the builder's consciousness wavered between choices. Then, slowly, the red warning lights began to fade. The surge of power reversed itself, flowing back down into the containment systems. Containment protocols REINSTATET. Builder consciousness, returning to dormancy. Kira felt the connection breaking, the digital space fading around her. The last thing she saw was the builder's consciousness accepting its new role, not as masters of evolution, but as observers of it. When she opened her eyes, the trial chamber had returned to its normal state. Vexthor was disconnecting the quantum processors with shaking hands, his biomechanical face displaying open amazement. "You did it," he said quietly. "You showed them something their vast intelligence could never have calculated, the value of uncertainty itself." Kira managed a weak smile. "We did it. All of us. Human intuition, quantum processing, crystalline thought. Everything working together. The way evolution is supposed to work." The Lumerian observer drifted forward, their crystalline form refracting patterns of deep respect. "The trial challenges are officially concluded, though I believe their original purpose has become somewhat irrelevant." "Agreed," Vexthor said. He turned to Kira, his quantum processors humming with what might have been embarrassment. "I was wrong about humans, about you. Your species doesn't need to catch up to anyone. You're evolving in your own way, at your own pace. And there's something remarkable in that." Kira stood shakily, supported by both Vexthor and the Lumerian. Around them, the Academy systems had returned to normal, but she could feel something had fundamentally changed. The ancient AIs were watching them all with new interest, seeing in their unified action a path of evolution that even the builders hadn't imagined. "So," she said, managing a grin, "does this mean I can stay at the Academy?" The chamber filled with laughter, crystalline chimes, quantum harmonics, and simple human joy, all mixing together in a symphony of diversity. And deep in the Academy systems, the contained consciousness of the builders settled into their sleep, now dreaming of possibilities they had never before considered.